I haven't competed in 4.5 years, so I entered a tournament with no idea what I was doing. It started with watching Wolf Glick's 2024 World Championship run. I'd watched Wolf many years before that and knew him as the best player. So when his championship run was recommended, I clicked it without noticing how long it was. 2.5 hours later, and I felt a deep nostalgia wanting nothing more than to jump back into the world of competitive Pokemon. And besides, how rusty could I really be? The tournament I was looking to enter is called the Global Challenge and was open to players, well, across the globe. To make things more intense, this tournament championship points were on the line, which is how players qualify for the Pokemon World Championship. Basically, for those who want to be the best like no one ever was, there was a lot on the line. Then there's me, a trainer with no idea where to even start when it comes to team building in this new generation. What I did know is this tournament allowed one restricted Pokemon, which are typically the strongest Pokemon available. And with only 5 days to prep, I needed to choose my restricted Pokemon. Typically, hunting down one of these legendary Pokemon can be a massive time sink. So I took a look into my box and looked to see what I have and saw the classic Pokemon Mewtwo. I thought it'd be funny to build a team around Mewtwo, but I knew from playing all those years ago that Mewtwo was, sadly, a terrible Pokemon in competitive. That got me thinking, what is good? And so, I called up my friend who knew a lot more about the current format than I did. He told me about two powerhouses that have been running around ever since the Sword and Shield DLC, those being Calyrex Shadow Rider and Calyrex Ice Rider. Except the problem is, I haven't beat the Sword and Shield DLC yet, and I didn't know if I had time to complete it. And gambling I would be able to finish it in time seemed really risky. So I asked my friend if Zacian was still good, and to my surprise, he said no. But he said instead, Zamazenta had taken over the meta. I haven't used Zamazenta before, but it seemed like a fun Pokemon to use, so I started getting to work team building around it. I spent hours working on this Zamazenta team, and it just wasn't clicking. And it wasn't Zamazenta that was the problem. I just couldn't really figure out what Pokemon to put around it to support it and play around it. Maybe I would have to make the gamble anyways and try to complete the Sword and Shield DLC. But if I'm gonna complete a DLC, why not just complete the Scarlet and Violet one? I could get the new legendary Pokemon, Terapagos. I proceeded to boot up my game, which has been dormant for quite some time, and jumped on Koraidon to start playing the DLC. Wait, jumped on Koraidon? I built Koraidon for raids before. His movesets and stats weren't perfect for competitive Pokemon and were made for raids, but he had max attack investment and max speed investment, which was usable, and if I fixed the moveset, this could work. At this point, I spent most of the day trying to work on a Zamazenta team, and that didn't work out, so we needed to pick a restricted Pokemon now, and that restricted Pokemon was going to be Koraidon. Today, the team had to be finalized and ready to go. With Koraidon locked in as our restricted Pokemon, now we needed to figure out what Pokemon could synergize with it. In this generation, there are special Pokemon that can get a boost from Koraidon. These are called Paradox Pokemon. Basically, when Koraidon enters the battle, he'll set the Sun condition. This Sun condition activates the ability of certain Paradox Pokemon from Pokemon Scarlet. When thinking about the team, I knew this was something I was going to want. I also knew I wanted to build around a Fire, Water, Grass core. General idea of a Fire, Water, Grass core is a rock, paper, scissors type of thing, where fire beats grass, grass beats water, water beats fire. The general idea here is because of the way their types work, they should be able to cover each other's weaknesses. So what three Pokemon can benefit from Koraidon and fulfill our Fire, Water, Grass core? Well, starting out, Terra types are in this game. We can make any Pokemon a Fire type, a Water type, or Grass type, but I wouldn't be comfortable just saying, oh, because we have Fire, Water, Grass, Terra types, we have a Fire, Water, Grass core. But I think if we did this for one Pokemon, it could work. Especially if that one Pokemon is our restricted Pokemon that gets good access to Fire type moves. That being Koraidon. It makes a lot of sense to have him as our Fire type in this core. As for Grass, I remember using Rillaboom competitively all those years ago, and actually still had one built in my Pokemon home. So I grabbed Rillaboom, and that's our Fire and Grass right there. As for Water, we needed a Water type that also benefited from Koraidon Sun. Except the thing about the Sun condition is it halves the damage of Water type attacks. Typically in Sun teams, they'll often be ran without a Water type Pokemon. So having a Sun team that also wanted to be a Fire, Water, Grass core was honestly a little bit ridiculous. Except there was a new Pokemon in town. One that I hadn't known existed until I started looking into it. that Pokemon being Walking Wake. This is the Paradox version of Suicune, and it was a water dragon type, but its water attack was really interesting. Rather than being halved by the sun, its damage was boosted by the sun. Not only that, but the sun worked with its ability because it was a Paradox Pokemon, meaning I could increase either its speed or special attack. Taking a step back, this was a really good looking core. Koraidon, Rillaboom, and Walking Wake, this looked very powerful. For my last 3 Pokemon, I was trying to think of weaknesses of these 3, but because I didn't really know the format, I wasn't sure what its weaknesses were. It looked great to me. So rather than trying to figure out what its weaknesses were in such a time crunch, I just figured I'd add another Paradox Pokemon in. And one that I was told was insanely strong was the Paradox Pokemon Fluttermane. Not only does this Pokemon hit insanely hard, but it also gets the move Trick Room, which, while I wasn't sure about strengths and weaknesses, I did know Trick Room was a problem in the past, and I'm sure it was a problem now. My idea here is, if the other team uses Trick Room, my Fluttermane can also use Trick Room to reverse it, and then set up my restricted Pokemon, or whatever Pokemon is next to Fluttermane. Now we had 2 slots left, but to be honest, I'm happy with this team at this point, and didn't know what else to bring, so I sort of just looked at my Pokemon home, seeing if there's anything I used in years past to bring with me. Sadly, I only found 2 Pokemon that I really felt could hang with the current times in a restricted format, those being Incineroar and Landorus Therian. I know both of these Pokemon are quite hated, but Landorus Therian I've heard has fallen off in recent years, and Incineroar still runs rampant. So I've kind of built a hate towards Incineroar, just watching content throughout the years, but Landorus has a special place in my heart, because while he did run rampant, I was one of the abusers and definitely fell in love with him. So I added Landorus into the team, but I didn't want to bring Incineroar. So we were in a spot with 5 slots filled, which is really good, but no idea what to put into that 6th slot. Either way, I knew worst case scenario, I could in theory throw Incineroar into that slot, so it felt more important to start working on getting these core 5 ready for battle. With my team nearly all planned out, I started getting to work, but ran into a major issue. Turns out, Walking Wake is an event-only Pokemon that I didn't have. When I saw this, my heart sunk, because as we talked about before, no other Pokemon can do what Walking Wake does for this team. Without Walking Wake, my team was ruined. But wait, maybe I could trade someone for it. So I called up my friend and asked if he had one. Sadly, no. No, he didn't. But he did remind me that Pokemon Home had an app that you could actually use to trade with players around the globe. So I began looking into it and seeing if anybody had a Walking Wake up for trade. I hunted around for trades, but unfortunately, nobody wanted the Pokemon I had. Even though I had strong Pokemon in the past, and quite a few of them, they weren't the new, powerful, shiny Pokemon like Calyrex, Koraidon, or Miraidon. Except, I do have a Koraidon. But I can't trade Koraidon. I need it in my team. Except, in Scarlet and Violet, you get the option to get a second of the box art legendary, specifically for trading. And while this wasn't exactly what I had in mind for trading away this Koraidon, I knew what I had to do. This emotional moment about how I have to get rid of my Koraidon seems like a great time to ask for you to subscribe. So subscribe, thanks. And so, thanks to some trainer named Apple, I now have a brand new Walking Wake. Even though I only had that Koraidon for maybe 10 minutes, I was sad to see him go, and I hope Apple takes good care of him. But with Walking Wake at my side, we spent the rest of the day building the team, but quickly ran out of daylight. We would have to finish tomorrow. On day 3, the team was coming along really well, except for one thing. See, when I was building the team, my philosophy was to not rely on luck, and this meant using 100% accurate moves. Unfortunately, a new move for Koraidon caught my eye, Scale Shot. This is a dragon-type attack that hits 2 to 5 times, lowers our defense, but it also raises our speed. Well, first of all, this move wasn't 100% accurate, and it also has that luck factor of hitting 2 to 5 times. This seems exactly the opposite of what I was trying to go for. Except there was a new item called Loaded Dice, and this meant rather than hitting 2 to 5 times, it would always hit 4 to 5 times. Except that doesn't solve the problem that this move isn't 100% accurate. But what if that was to our advantage rather than our disadvantage? Enter the move Temper Flare, a base 75 attack that if you miss the turn before, it doubles in power. This is also a fire type move. So when you stack that with the Sun, Terra Fire, and being a 150 base power move coming from our restricted Pokemon, this thing can hit like a truck. And that's all well and good, but this is actually something I built on day 2, so why am I bringing it up now? Well, it became time to teach Temper Flare to our Koraidon, and I realized this move is at the end of not the first Scarlet and Violet DLC, but into the second one. Make things worse, I haven't even beaten the first DLC yet. But I wasn't really thinking about not doing the DLC at this point. Day 3 was coming along very well and the team was building itself. So we started working on the DLC. And while I didn't know how long the DLC would take, I was optimistic about being able to finish it. And I'm really glad I ended up committing to doing the DLC because we ended up finding our 6th member that way. To make a long story short, the legendary of the first DLC is a Pokemon called Ogerpon. I wasn't planning on adding this to the team, but you had to use it against Carmen, and so rather than mess up its EVs, I decided to just build it. We were also lacking a real support Pokemon, so I gave it maximum HP, maximum defense, and taught it the move Follow Me. With Ogerpon joining the team, we finally had 6 members. But with day 3 coming to an end, we would have to get Temper Flare tomorrow. At this point, the team was nearly complete, and we spent the rest of the day working through the DLC. That was until we were faced with one person standing between our Koraidon and his new move Temper Flare. That man was Mr. Sandwich. After making a great sandwich on our first try, we acquired the last move we needed. Well, actually, no. A couple days ago when I was crafting the team, I saw somebody use a different move rather than Earthquake on Landorus. When I used Landorus years ago, he was paired with multiple Protect Pokemon and also Thundurus, a flying type who was immune to Earthquake. And the alternate move in question didn't exist when I first trained Landorus, so it was a new thing to try. That move was Stomping Tantrum, the ground type equivalent of the move Temper Flare we just got. This move has a 75 base power compared to the 100 of Earthquake, but it was single target and wouldn't hit our own Pokemon. While I really like the strength of Earthquake, I was a little worried about the risk factor in it, and when looking at usage statistics, 90% of Landorus T users ended up bringing this move. I still had the rest of today and tomorrow until the competition and could end the day getting this move. But would I regret it? Was this move actually better? In the end, I ended up beating 6 trainers and acquiring the move. With teaching it to Landorus, our team was complete, except for one thing which we would finish tomorrow. The last touch we needed was to change our Koraidon's Terra type from Dragon to Fire. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough Terra Shards, and I knew grinding out these raids would take a lot of time. Instead, I decided to run around the Indigo Disc DLC picking up all types of Terra Shards. So of course, I found every single type of Terra Shard except for Fire before finally finding some Fire Shards. And even then, I was just a touch short. So to top it off, I did just a couple raids to get enough Fire Terra Shards. We then ran to Norman's restaurant, fed Koraidon something, and then bam, Terra Fire. Finally, the team was complete. Next was to do some practice games. Well, that's what we probably should have done. Except this week was finals week. It actually was this entire week of prep. Maybe not my best decision to commit to this during finals week, but in the end, the finals were complete and the team was complete. And tomorrow, the battles would begin. A1, baby. Going into the tournament, my goal was never to win, or actually even do well for that matter. The goal was to shake off rust and improve each and every day. What this meant was winning more games on day 2 than we did on day 1, and winning more games on day 3 than we did on day 2. This meant on day 1, our goal was to set the bar for the rest of the tournament. With 15 games to play, how many games did we win? 7? 8? 9? Well, on day 1, we had a result of going 4-11. Yeah, while I didn't expect to do well, this was definitely worse than I thought. To be honest, every game, I just didn't know what was happening. There were so many new Pokemon and new tools that I was just confused in each and every game, not sure what the opponent was going to do. After such a poor performance, I was discouraged and defeated. My expectations were also at an all-time low. Looking forward to day 2, I was hoping maybe I could win 5 games, In full transparency, I didn't even fully believe in that. I had some reflecting to do. With another set of 15 battles in my future, I went on a morning walk to reflect on my team and get my mind straight. We're coming back after a long time, and we're just trying to get back in the groove of things. And people in this tournament, especially the time we played yesterday, went against a lot of Japanese players. And they're playing to really play. That's how they're qualifying for Worlds. And so we're really right into the thick of it. But as far as what our team wants to do, I think our huge weakness that we have is we're struggling with speed control. I was hoping Trick Room Fluttermane was going to give me the little bit of speed control I would need against Tailwind. But even if I hard read that Tailwind, that's kind of the only way it works, actually, is if I hard read the Tailwind. And I had a game that was against Tornadus Kyogre, and the Tornadus didn't set up Tailwind when I went for a hard read on Trick Room. He just Bleak Wind Stormed, and he won the game. That's needing to make that kind of prediction is a little bit rough. There's just a lot of downside to that. And if I get the Trick Room off, I mean, that's not even a guarantee that I'm going to win that match. Whereas if they make the right read there, they just win. I don't think Fluttermane is our answer for speed control, at least with the set we built. What we can use Trick Room for is, I think, for countering other Trick Rooms with our Flutter. But that's really the only thing I think it has going for it in terms of using that Trick Room. Because we do have some fast mons. We have the Scale Shot Koraidon. And when we're running Trick Room with that gets weird. Because then we might be doing more harm than good. So, I don't know. Using the Trick Room is not working the way we were hoping it would. And that's just sort of learning how this game works again. What we do want to use Fluttermane for is, I think we need to bring him more. It is just a strong Pokemon that can clean up late game, or honestly might not be a bad lead just because it has that Focus Sash. What it does do phenomenally is it shuts down Calyrex Shadow. And that's good. It's kind of just the Trick Room is a wasted move slot, but we can't change that now. Enough about Fluttermane. Next mod I want to talk about is Ogerpon. And as far as Ogerpon goes, I think the real issue there is we tried to make it do two different things in regards to its EV spread and moveset. I ran Horn Leech, and I'm now realizing Horn Leech is only good if you're running max attack, which we're running max HP, max defense, just to kind of be funny and do some more follow me supportive stuff. And that's just not really working. So that's sort of just a wasted move slot, to be honest. And then we have, Ivy Cudgel? Probably said that wrong. That move's not bad. It gives us some decent coverage. But it doesn't hit as hard as we want. So we have the follow me. We have the synthesis. But really, Ogerpon is just there for follow me. He's just pure follow me support, which I don't think is getting the most out of them on. With our moveset, I think if we did a different moveset, I mean, we don't even have, was it Spiky Shield or King Shield? I think it's Spiky Shield. It's Aegislash with King Shield. But it's just not working great, the EV spread with the moveset. But we do have the follow me. And so we have Ogerpon as kind of a one-trick pony. And because, I mean, as much as I'd love to change moveset right now, we can't. But it does allow us for some really good Koraidon setup with the Scale Shot, because that is the one little bit of speed control we have that I think we need to play around more often. The Loaded Dice Scale Shot actually does a ton of damage, and it's very rarely resisted. I think that's one of the fortunately it's our restricted, I think was built properly. I maybe wish I had Jolly instead of Adamant, because I get outsped by Miraidon. However, if I'm able to set up that Scale Shot, that gives me a small advantage over it. The issue is the Scale Shot doesn't compete with Tailwind. If I have +1, it doesn't matter because they get double speed, and that's a huge problem. And honestly, we just have nothing to deal with that. I really don't know what we do if they have Tailwind. I think we have to try to just Ogerpon, Scale Shot spam, and just try to get to like +2, +3 in order to start outspeeding things. I think we can protect spam and try to stall it out a little bit. That could work. The other thing we have, and this is sort of our other form of quote-unquote speed control, besides Groudon, is our Rillaboom's Grassy Glide is actually really solid. That he has really high attack, you have the Grassy Terrain, you have the Stab. That honestly might be something I need to Terra more often if I see the opportunity that they're not going to resist it. And the other thing it has is it has Assault Vest. Like, that thing is very, very bulky. And I think it can work with Landorus, which we'll get to in a second, with Landorus having that Intimidate support. And then Rillaboom having the Assault Vest. Like, if we're against physical attackers, Landorus sort of shuts them down fairly decently. And if they're special attackers, Rillaboom can just wall them. With talking about Koraidon and Rillaboom, the kind of third Pokemon that was sort of our fire, water, grass core is the Walking Wake. And I'm actually still a believer in that core. I think that's the one part of the team that's going really well and feels really strong. Scale Shot Koraidon feels solid. Our Rillaboom feels solid. And Walking Wake hits like a truck. And I underestimated how strong its typing is. And especially being able to just Terra Water, I've done a handful of times. And Terra Water in the Sun Hydro Steam with Life Orb hits really hard. However, again, the issue is we get outsped often. We went with Modest, which I think was definitely a mistake. We get that special attack boost from the Sun, which is huge, but I think our damage is kind of just good enough already as it is. And the speed would be really nice, and we don't have any ways to improve our Walking Wake speed, nor do we have any ways to hinder the opponent. That's kind of just a team building issue, but again, that doesn't matter. We have to find a way to get Walking Wake to work, and I think that's going to look like stalling out Tailwind. Really, I think we can't lead Walking Wake. There's just too many bad matchups for it, but I think it can close out games if we set it up right. That's honestly just a now realization. A lot of those games we were leading Walking Wake, and I don't know, maybe that's still good. It could do both. It's just, if it gets outsped, it's cooked. Like, if we go against a Miraidon, we just get Draco Meteor and we're done. And it's a very common thing to happen. There's a lot of things with Dragon Pulse, any fairy types can really just absolutely roll us, which we have the Terra Water, but then Miraidon can kind of just Volt Switch or any of its electric type moves. And we can't do too much about that. And that's where we're going to talk about Landorus next. Because the idea with Landorus was he was supposed to be kind of our answer for Miraidon. To be honest, it's not living up to it. Maybe it's a skill issue. But every time I go against Miraidon, they have answers to the Landorus. Often that's Intimidate. Intimidate is tough. I don't even think it's a Landorus or like a team building issue, like in terms of EV sets. Because we need the Scarf to outspeed Miraidon. And so we could do Clear Amulet to not get intimidated, but then we just get one shot because Draco Meteor with Specs and any electric terrain boosting Miraidon from its ability, that kills Landorus every day of the week. Assault Vest Landorus, maybe. That could have been an answer. But that's what's really tragic, is Landorus was our answer for Miraidon. And to be honest, he doesn't get it done. There's too much counterplay to him. I mean, a single Fairy Terra, and he's cooked. And before we keep going on with talking about each individual Pokemon, that's something I want to point out, is Fairy types and Fairy Terras are really, really bad for us. We don't have a single steel move. We don't have a single poison move. We have 2 dragon types. Need I say more? I mean, that's not good. But our one kind of small answer to it is we have Fire Terra Koraidon that does okay into it and just kind of hits hard. So that's our small saving grace, but I really do wish we had a kind of steel Terra. Just realized that water was probably just absolutely destroying this footage. Oh well. Maybe it's beautiful ambiance. I doubt it is. Either way, Fairy Terra, no bueno. As long as we don't do worse than 4 and 11 today, which honestly I think that might be hard to do given our information now, but maybe I'm jinxing myself. As long as we do better, that's all we can ask for each and every single one of these tournament days. And I think going forward, next time we're gonna have to practice more with the team before. I mean, this is my first time using Regulation G, I guess any regulation for that matter. And so that's kind of just the way it goes. Everyone else here is experienced with Regulation G. They've had practice. They know the matchups. They know what each Pokemon is doing. And I don't. But after our 15 games yesterday, I think we have a better idea. And I think we're going to go at least 5 and 10 today. Let's do it. With a better understanding of my team, I decided to approach the first battles of the day. I decided to split the 15 battles into 3 sets of 5. This was a strategy I did yesterday, and despite my poor performance, this was one of the things I think went right. First game of the day was a loss. Not a great start. But as for the first set, we ended up going 2 and 3, which was better than yesterday. And the second set went the same, another 2 and 3. We already had the same number of wins as yesterday. That brought us to our final set. And game 1 was a win. Game 2, a win. Game 3, a win. Game 4, a win. And of course ended on a loss. But overall, went incredibly well beyond my expectations. That meant ending the day, we went 8 and 7. Not only did we do better than yesterday, we managed to go positive. The team was finally clicking, and I personally was playing really well. I was starting to know the game plan of my opponents before the game began, and was able to make reads based on that. I was back in the groove and on a high. I felt like I was playing out of my mind and the matchups were in my favor. But would this continue? Was I actually playing well, or was I just getting lucky? But most importantly, we set the goal to do better each and every day. Could I really do better on day 3 than going 8 and 7 on day 2? I guess we'll see on day 3. Alrighty, we got morning walk before day 3. Yesterday we went 8 and 7, which is significantly improved over our 4 and 11. Kind of our last string of 5 games, we went on a huge win streak. Besides the last game, but that last game was the most fun game we've had this set. It was, I made some really good plays, and so did they, and they just ended up losing. But it was such a fun game. It was just mind games all the way, and had a great time with it. So I'm excited going into this next set of 15 games. But at the same time, I'm kind of nervous. I'm not sure I can do better than 8 and 7. Going positive on the day was already kind of that was sort of a big goal. I kind of thought that was going to be the day 3 goal, but we did it on day 2. And can we really go 9 and 6? Can we go 10 and 5? Boy, I don't know if we can do it. But as far as the team goes, Ogerpon's my GOAT. And if I just started bringing him earlier, I think those early games could have gone a lot better. His sort of counterpart that has disappointed me and has been sidelined. And I'm not sure what to do about it. And that's our Choice Scarf Landorus. It's Choice Scarf Jolly Nature Landorus. The problem with it is, even with all that speed investment, it's not... If they get up Tailwind, which is something we don't have an answer to, Landorus just gets outsped. and kind of just gets demolished. He's not crazy durable. I mean, he's okay durability, but it's just, I don't know, he just doesn't feel that tanky. I guess he's durable on paper. I would think he'd be durable, but he's just not. And it kind of surprised me. Like, it's more than just, he's not even dying to ice type moves or water type moves. He kind of just gets hit really hard by the restricteds in the format. I mean, I guess Kyogre is a water type, and so that's tough. But even Miraidon just clicks Draco Meteor. It doesn't have to click an electric type move. And the Intimidate doesn't do a lot against Miraidon, doesn't do anything against Miraidon, who is the reason I brought Landorus. Because I was thinking, hey, this is going to be the Miraidon counter, because I heard Miraidon was sort of top of the format, Terra Electric, just did a ton of damage. What's crazy is I've seen more Terra Fairies. And so I'll click Stomping Tantrum into the Miraidon slot, and they'll just Terra, eat it, Draco Meteor, I'm down a Pokemon. Stomping Tantrum was honestly just a mistake. It's just such a weak move. With Landorus, it's a weak move to have to lock into and use time and time again. Because my Koraidon has Temper Flare, which is the same thing, just the fire type version. But that's kind of synergizes with, I can click Scale Shot, and if I miss, then Temper Flare is there, which has happened a couple times yesterday. And I think a one hit every time. The damage is ridiculous. But Landorus isn't getting that. He can't, with Choice Scarf, he's not able to click Rock Slide and then Stomping Tantrum, which that actually could be good. That has some potential. But all that's to say, Stomping Tantrum isn't a good move to click. It's just not. Like, I guess I could lead it, U-turn, and then have the Intimidate later. And he's like a fast support Pokemon, I guess. But I feel like Ogerpon just brings more value with the Follow Me. It kind of feels like I just shouldn't bring Landorus. I know Landorus, this is Landorus T, by the way. I know Landorus T is a very hated Pokemon. Just kind of, it ran rampant. But for me, that was one of my favorite competitive mons to use. It was very entry-level friendly. It offered a lot, and it paired very well alongside Thundurus, who I think is a very cool Pokemon, and was also a menace back in the day. I just don't think I can bring Landorus. And that hurts. Like, every match, I want to bring Landorus. I just like bringing him. And kind of saying, hey, I'm never going to bring this guy. That feels bad. But enough about Landorus. I don't even need to talk about everyone else. Because honestly, talking about everyone else, they've all started to perform. And the reason why is because we're not getting destroyed by speed control anymore. We're getting, speed control is a problem, don't get me wrong. But it's playable because of Ogerpon. Because Follow Me doesn't care how fast they are. And then they are wasting their move slots into the Ogerpon. And then we're actually getting attacks off with our attacking Pokemon. Like Walking Wake, like Koraidon. Even Rillaboom with Solar Blade is used a couple times. Most times Grassy Glide. Bro, the Ogerpon has just been the MVP. Either way, I think that's kind of all I have to say. And so, Ogerpon's the GOAT. See how the rest of these games go. See if we can go 9-6. The pressure was on. And if I wanted to win 9 games, I needed to start out right. But just like every other day, the first game was a loss. It's okay though. That's just our warm-up game. That's been a consistent factor throughout the tournament. But after the first set of 5 games, we were only able to pick up one single win. I was so nervous going into that first set. I wasn't playing confident. I wasn't making reads like before. I was scared. Fear, coupled with a couple unlucky crits, coupled with pressure, made me crumble. And with only 10 games left, I would have to win 8 of them. Something had to change. And instead of the game plan of leaving Landorus behind, I brought him to multiple games. While I'd like to tell you he was the hero of this story, and I wish he was, I ended the day going 6-9, only winning 1 game bringing him. This was a performance worse than day 2. So we just finished our games of this tournament, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't disappointed with how it went. Let's see, the final score went 18-27. I was hoping to go even, I think. My dream of that, I suppose, died after the first day. But I think what disappointed me the most is I didn't reach my ideal goal. That being, when I set out to do this, I wanted to do better each and every day. And given how bad the first day was, going 4-11, I thought it might be possible, and I was pretty confident going into day 2. And that confidence translated to actually going positive on the day, which very much surprised me. I was expecting to go maybe get 6 wins, 7 wins would have been amazing. Instead, I got 8 wins out of my 15 games. And that was absolutely incredible. And then day 3 came, and I felt more prepared than ever, but I was also very intimidated at the idea of going 9-6 and topping the games from the day before. And I think that intimidation and kind of fear factor made me play worse. There was definitely plays that were easy to make, and I would realize them after I locked my moves, and it was just too late at that point. I ended up going 6-9. 6-9 on day 3, which does not even compete to going even with day 2. And the opponents were a little bit better. I was going against the worst of the worst after my performance on day 1, but that's still not an excuse. I should have been able to go even, and it just feels bad. I don't feel good about it at all. I know I could have done better. I know my team wasn't optimal, and I had no practice before I started this tournament. I went in blind with a little bit of research on what the meta was, but honestly, I thought I was going to go against a lot of Miraidon. I went against very few. I thought I'd see a lot of Calorexes, and I did see a good handful, but there was just some weird matchups, and the big thing was speed control. I thought Trick Room Fluttermane was going to be good enough speed control. I had it as a counter to other Trick Rooms, and I thought, oh, it'll double as my own form of speed control to counter Tailwind. But I didn't account for the fact that you're moving last when you use Trick Room, and with how dynamic speed is in the game, I wasn't able to compete with Prankster Tailwind and even other Trick Room users. I had to make crazy predictions that just coin flip games. And I lost a lot of games because of that. And again, that didn't feel great. So I'm pretty disappointed with how it went, which maybe I shouldn't be. Maybe I really shouldn't be, because that day 2 was very impressive. I surprised myself, and if you rearrange the scores, I mean, I went 4-11, and then I had a 6-9, and then I had 8-7. So I guess day 2 probably should have been day 3, and day 3 probably should have been day 2. But on day 3, I made mistakes, but at least those mistakes they weren't from not knowing. They were just me playing bad. I don't know if that's better, but that day 1 was really just learning. And that's what I was hoping to do with this whole thing, is learn how to get back into VGC. And I plan on doing more, even though I don't feel great right now. I mean, I just finished my last game 5 minutes ago and just turned on the camera to record and talk about it. And so maybe I need to show myself a little bit more compassion and take this away as, hey, I played 45 games. And if I'm being honest, at the end of that, I was very taxed. I was very drained. That was a lot of games over the course of 3 days. And I was trying very hard in each game. It was a lot of brain power going into it. And honestly, the least brain power is probably day one, because it was, I'll do this move, because there wasn't anything to predict, because I didn't know what the other team was going to do. And as the tournament went on, I started to learn how everything was working, and that put my brain into overdrive, and I had to make predictions to be able to win games. And so I ended up being below 50% by quite a bit, and that was maybe not my public goal, I guess, but deep down that's what I wanted. The bigger goal was getting better each and every day, and that didn't happen either. And so I kind of just failed to meet all the goals I had. And I think I'll look back at it as having had fun. Right now I'm just really defeated, to be honest. And that's not a feel good thing to watch, but we're keeping it real. And I guess we're going to learn from this. I understand the format way more now. I mean, not even just restricted, it's just how important speed control is. And that's that's honestly the biggest thing. Learning Weather War was big as well. Terrain War was another really big thing. There's just all these little things that I was starting to learn. And there's another month of Reg G. I think there's another tournament using Reg G, and so I definitely hope to be participating in that. And if it's the next regulation, then I'll participate in that too. And the goal for that will just be to do better than we did on this, which fortunately isn't of a high ceiling or high bar to get over. We really didn't do that great, but I think I can look at that day two and be really happy. I think if I want to focus on something, I think it's important to focus on the good in things. There's a lot to learn, not to ignore that, but that day two went really well. I went positive, and I didn't think I was going to go positive on day two. I thought it was going to be day three, and that was impressive. I played well that day, and honestly, the games I lost, my opponents played well. And those were actually the most fun games, is when I felt like I was playing good and I lost because the opponent was also playing good. And on day three, that wasn't the case. It felt like when I win, it was because my opponent played bad and I just played okay. And then when I lost, it was from me playing bad and not getting outplayed necessarily. And that, keep saying it, that just didn't feel great. That didn't feel the best. The other thing that, I don't know why I'm hesitant to do this. I don't want to blame the team, even though it's a team I built. I don't think it's good. If I was very good at this game, I could have done way better. And I think the team, it made it an uphill battle for me, but it had enough of the pieces. It technically had all the pieces to make things work. Granted, I think at the end of the day, I made very poor decisions every single time I picked Landorus. I think if I were to go back and watch every single game that I picked Landorus, I could have picked someone else and it would have worked just as well. There maybe would have been one game where Landorus actually was decent and the correct choice. But really, Ogerpon kind of just did everything I wanted Landorus to do and some. Basically, at the end of the day, as a player, I just should never have picked Landorus in any of my games, which is very, very different from how it was when I used to play. And maybe I should have picked or brought Incineroar. I don't know how I feel about that. I'm not a big Incineroar person, but I know he's very strong, and so maybe that's something I should have done. There's a lot of things with the team building that did go wrong, but there were some things that went right. The Walking Wake with Koraidon was insane. The Walking Wake's damage with Sun was ridiculous. Even if this isn't a restricted format, I could bring Torkoal and Walking Wake would do a ton. I mean, it hits so hard in the Sun, and the fact it's doing a water type move also means if they use a fire type to try to take advantage of my Sun, then I have these water moves that are going to hit super effective. So Walking Wake was an absolute asset to the team. Maybe I'd pivot it to Timid instead of Modest, but if I have speed control, maybe I don't need to do that. Fluttermane was also very decent. Kind of just did exactly what it needed to do. The Trick Room was a little odd, but it also worked in certain cases. Still, Icy Wind might be a better move there. Koraidon I'm a believer in. I think him setting the sun and then being able to Terra Fire, that worked pretty well. In that last game, I didn't realize Terrapagos thing like is super effective against other Terras, so that threw me off for sure. But otherwise, having him as a fire type in the sun, it gave him a ton of options. And the scale shot was interesting because it was really good with the loaded dice, but when it misses, it really hurts. And it felt like it missed more than 95% accuracy, but that's always how it feels. But I did have the Temper Flare to kind of negate that a little bit, though most of the time I felt like I needed to use Protect when it missed, because when I would go for it, it'd be for speed control. And so again, if I have speed control, that's probably a different story. The other Pokemon that did just crazy things, that was my sixth member of my team, was Ogerpon. And I think I misheard a video somewhere about the build. Maybe I didn't, but I ended up going max HP, max defense, and I didn't do Wellspring Ogerpon. I did the fire one. I think it's Hearthflame. And honestly, the typing was really nice, and still was able to not hit hard, but if I chose to attack with it, you couldn't ignore it. And it just ended up doing really well. I'd probably change some things on its set. I'd probably take away Horn Leech and actually give it a good attacking grass move. But the Follow Me was phenomenal. It was very powerful, and putting it next to any of my Pokemon protected them tremendously. And so Ogerpon was definitely a standout that I'm glad I found. And so that was awesome, and it works in that fire, water, grass core. If I do the Hearthflame one, that is fire and grass right there, and then with Walking Wake, that's water. So you can kind of count that. I count Koraidon as being part of the fire core. And so that trio I really believe in. And before it was the Rillaboom that I thought was going to be the grass member, and I think he did okay. He never felt like he was the reason we were losing. But as the games went on and on and on, I just started bringing Ogerpon over Rillaboom way more frequently. And Rillaboom did decent, but it was really there for the terrain against the Miraidon matchup, and we just didn't see that a lot. And so that was I don't know if he's actually that good without answering that. I think Ogerpon is just better. And so that's another team member I'd have to consider. The other member is Fluttermane that just I think I have to keep it on the team. Maybe it's maybe up for debate. I could switch it out. I needed a steel or poison type to deal with other fairy types. That was something we were definitely missing. There were just a lot of holes with the team, and I did my best to work around them, but it wasn't enough. I wasn't good enough of a player, and I didn't know what was happening well enough. And that's okay. I will practice with the next team before the next tournament, because I think that was a tremendous downfall that we ran into. And I think playing 15 games before the tournament, that'll change the results completely. Because really, that first 15 games on day one, not even just understanding the team, but I just didn't know what things did. I'm almost surprised I got 4 wins at all. I was just completely lost. And it felt like I learned really fast going into day 2 and then day 3. It was just a bad day. That might be the way to look at it, is day 3 I just wasn't on my game. I really wanted to be, and maybe that desire to want to play well and the pressure, I think it got to me. And I didn't expect to feel pressure or feel any stress about this. I kind of expected to go into it just having a great time with it, and it was fun. Maybe I'm gaslighting myself, but I think it was fun at the end of the day. But I wasn't expecting me to take it as serious as I did. It was sort of just occupying my thoughts the entire weekend. And I think if I spend some time practicing on the ladder before the next one, I'll be ready. And it's not going to be about improving each and every time for the next one. We're going to try to go positive. I don't want to be under 1500 again. That's not fun. Essentially, if I didn't play, I would have had a better rating than I actually did. And so our goal is to stay above 1500 while still playing all 45 games. And so, if you're interested in that, I guess we'll see how that goes.